In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what you need to do to break through a fat loss plateau in 2026. Now, the chances are this will happen at some point during your journey. It might happen probably for the first month. You might even got 2 months into dieting and you don't really change anything. However, at certain points, you will find that there might be certain tools that you need to kind of use to help you break through these plateaus so you continue to lose body fat as a calorie deficit can start to dry up. The only time I would really start doing something like this would be if maybe kind of 2 weeks has gone by and you still haven't really noticed any progress. And when I say notice progress, this is going to be, dropping on the scales by around, 1% of your body weight. This is going to be possibly losing half a centimeter off your waist. Maybe this is just seeing a very clear progression in your photos every single week. These are like the kind of key metrics that you should be tracking. But there will be a certain point as to where possibly things can start to plateau a little bit. This is really common. First thing that I would say is a lot of the time people think they need to make changes to their plan when they actually don't. They think they need to drop their calories. They think they need to do loads of cardio. And this is actually one of the worst things you can do because you're actually just making things way harder than they need to be when you can still continue to make progress without. The goal with fat loss is to actually try and do the least amount of work while still making progress, because it means you kind of have more cards you can play over time if things do start to plateau. And it's also just way more manageable. Like, it's more realistic. If you can eat more food and you can do less cardio, your life's going to be more fun. So you don't want to make it harder than it needs to be, but you just need to be aware of certain things that possibly you can do. A lot of people kind of get a little bit what I call dietary fatigued when they continue being in deficit for quite a long time. So what can happen is you just start to get a little bit sloppy. So they hit plateaus, they stop losing body fat, the weight dries up a little bit, but it's not that they actually need to change anything. It's that they've just potentially not been quite as adherent as what they have been previously. And sometimes this is just down to complete lack of self-awareness. Like, you might not even be realizing that your tracking has slipped a little bit. You might not be realizing that you're just not quite doing as many steps as what you believe that you were, or you're just being a little bit more lazy. Our bodies do have a bit of a tendency of wanting to slow down a little bit when we're in a calorie deficit. Our bodies are kind of fighting back because, if we think about this properly, our body doesn't want to be losing weight. It doesn't want to be losing weight all the time. You can drop your first 5-10 kilos maybe quite comfortably, but your body is going to put up a bit of a fight. And the reason why it does that is that, our body is using this as a defense mechanism, right? It doesn't know the difference between you trying to lose fat to improve your confidence and to look great on the beach versus like you literally killing your body, because at the end of the day, like, your body thinks that you're dying. It thinks that you're about to lose a bunch of weight so that you're in starvation mode and that you die, right? So our body is essentially grabbing fat to make up a deficit that you have created. So over time, you potentially might need to kind of fight back against your body by making a couple of changes. But before you do either of these things that I'm about to explain, just be incredibly self-aware to make sure that you are following the plan as adherently as you can. Because I've worked with so many clients and I rarely make a change. They don't lose weight 1 week. I just tell them to tighten things up a little bit. I look through their MyFitnessPal. I find a few things that we might need to improve on. Normally that will actually move the needle forward without having to make a massive change. So be incredibly self-aware. Start really trying to understand, did I track that meal properly? Have I stopped weighing my food like I was previously? Have my habits slightly changed? And if you can confidently say, I'm still following it the same as I was, a few weeks ago, then this is when you kind of have the right to make one of these changes. So I pretty much keep this really simple. You have two options at this point, really. Like, someone might say, there's all sorts of other things that you can start to do. It's like really complicated methods, but let's just keep this really simple because you guys want simplicity. Now, you can either do one thing where you increase your calorie output, so you move more, you burn more calories, or you can decrease the amount of calories coming in. This kind of makes sense. When we understand that losing body fat is just energy balance, it's calories in versus calories out, you just need to literally play one of those sides to be able to continue to keep making progress. So first scenario is you just simply move more, okay? And this is my favorite one. So this is why at the start, you might want to do less really than what's required so that you've got, again, more wiggle room to start making more changes. So you might be on 10,000 steps per day, and that might be what you've done up to this point to keep losing body fat. And then you might go through this plateau. Like, right, it's not working anymore. What can I do? Very simply, just go from 10 to 12,000 steps per day. Like, this is such an easy change you can make. And I promise you this makes a massive difference. I've done a lot of photo shoot preps now, and I always start at 10,000. And every time I move to like 12,500 steps, I lose the last bit of fat. And I noticed that. And I don't need to go past 12,500 fat to come in super shredded. Like, that's like my number where I know I can go from 10 to 12.5, and that for me moves the needle forward actually quite significantly. So that's the first thing you can do. And to be honest, 2,500 extra steps per day, it's actually not that much. Like 30, 40 minutes of extra walking. You can even probably manage that into your day. It's really not that difficult. Or obviously you can just increase your cardio output. So, you might not be doing much cardio to start off with. So you can just literally add in, say, 2-3 sessions a week, doing 20 minutes of low intensity cardio at the end of your workout. This could be 20 minutes incline walking, 20 minutes on the stepper. Something that's actually relatively low intensity is way better. You don't want to do something that's going to cause a lot of fatigue, things like running. I'm not a massive fan of HIIT. It just puts your body into, a higher stressed state, which isn't really what you want during fat loss. So I'm a massive fan of low intensity cardio, keeping heart rate lower, burning potentially more fat anyway, and going down that route. So they're the kind of things that you can do to move that needle forward. And you might do a combination of both. Few extra 1,000 steps, couple of little bits of more cardio. Really, really simple. The other option you have, guys, is, you could just drop your calories, right? And this is kind of really simple, and maybe you just would go down that route if it just makes more sense. Maybe you've got a super busy lifestyle and, doing an extra couple of 1,000 steps per day is not realistic. You might just want to drop your calories. Now, what I would do in this instance is I would probably just start by dropping them by around 100. You could go by 200, but typically for the guys and girls that I work with, we would start at around 100, and this actually often can move the needle forward. In terms of what you drop, I would most likely go for carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are the only macronutrients which are not essential. And I'm not saying you don't need carbs. I'm saying that they're just not essential. This is why ketosis exists, because our body can be in a state of ketosis where it uses fat for fuel. Whereas fats and proteins, they are essential macronutrients where we cannot survive without obtaining those. So if you drop carbohydrates, your energy, might dip a little bit, but you can still sustain that diet. It's not actually going to be that detrimental. So I would always kind of pull from carbohydrates, and you might just want to start by pulling off, say, 30 grams of carbs, per day, which is going to be 120 calories. So really, really simple thing you can do in that instance. And as you start to come down a bit more, maybe we can start to reduce fat very slightly. I would never reduce protein. That is stable, that stays the same. You don't need to change that. So they're your kind of options, right? You kind of bring your overall weekly calories down, or you increase your energy output. I'm a massive fan of doing the first one, okay? I believe that you should try and keep your calories as high as possible in a fat loss phase. You don't want to be hungry for the sake of it. You don't want to be eating less food, right? Your gym performance is going to suck. Your social life is going to get worse. You just don't want to make it harder for yourself. So you might as well focus on trying to just be a little bit more active if you can, because it just makes way more sense. You being more active and moving more is actually probably going to improve your life more rather than dropping your calories. Now, you might have to drop your calories at some point, but I'm just a massive fan of going down the increasing expenditure route rather than dropping your calories. But of course, you can also do a combination of both those things, which can also work quite well. You might drop your calories a little bit, then you might increase your expenditure, and you just got a couple of cards you can kind of carry on, keep playing. This works really, really well. And generally, to break through plateaus, these are pretty much the only things you need to focus on, guys. You might want to occasionally look at doing a refeed. Like if you're super lean, and I mean you're like probably a lot below 10% and you're looking to get super shredded, possibly running a refeed where you just almost give your body a bit of a break from dieting. That can also sometimes break through plateaus. So you might want to run, like a couple of days maintenance where you increase your food for a few days, you get your body back to baseline, and that can then sometimes also break you through a plateau. It just lowers stress. It kind of gives your body a break, which means that you can then go back to a deficit and often also push for a plateau. So refeeds can work as well. There's not a massive amount of science behind refeeds, but they can work. And I used them when I was dieting to get super lean. I would have a day or two of just increasing my food. I'd have a controlled increase of carbohydrates. That also can work for some people as well. But honestly, unless you're trying to get super shredded, which, most people don't need to do that, just by doing those two things that I've mentioned there, you're going to be able to break through plateaus and continue to keep making progress towards your fat loss goals. So guys, I hope you found this video useful. I hope you've kind of understood what you would need to do in this situation. If you have noticed that you've plateaued before and you've not really known where to turn, self-assessment first, make sure that you're definitely still following the plan correctly. And then you can kind of decide which route you go down, maybe a bit of both, to keep moving forward towards your goals. So as always, if you found this useful, make sure you smash the like button, make sure you hit subscribe for future videos. Guys, I'm going to catch you in the next one.